Robert D'Onofrio is a data editor at Facebook, and he's here with an analysis of the numbers. Robert, thanks so much for being with us.
My pleasure.
I think this is so interesting because you're able to look at things essentially almost moment to moment and how people in Iowa are feeling. Let's start, first of all, with some of the big picture trends. What are some of the things that you saw with voters?
So we've been tracking conversation about the presidential election since the start of last year, and so far 76 million people have had 1.5 billion interactions related to the election. And what that means is they've posted on Facebook, they've commented on a post, they've liked a comment or a post related to one of the candidates or one of the issues specifically related to the election. So that's a large conversation that we've seen carry into the past week. 20 million people across the country have been talking about the election over the last week, heading into the caucuses tonight. Within Iowa specifically, 300,000 people have talked about the election in the last week, roughly about the size of the turnout that we expect at the caucuses this evening.
And which candidates are getting the most attention?
So over the last week, on the Republican side, we've seen Trump keep his place at #1, with Cruz definitely in second place and Rubio following in third. On the Democratic side, it's been a little bit of a back and forth, with Hillary kind of leading Bernie by a little bit up until today. So what we're seeing today is Bernie actually take a very large lead in mentions on Facebook in the social conversation about the Democratic candidates. So he has not only taken a lead over Hillary in the conversation today in Iowa among Iowans, in fact, he has more buzz than Donald Trump today as well, almost 2 times as many mentions on social media on Facebook compared to Donald Trump. So the big surprise today, Bernie is really, I think, getting his message out in terms of how we're seeing that reflected in the conversation. The other noteworthy thing today in Iowa on the Republican side is that Marco Rubio is the 5th most discussed candidate. So even though he had been 3rd over the last week heading into today, Ben Carson is now in 4th, and Rand Paul actually is now in 3rd place, perhaps reflecting some of the efforts that we've seen from him and his father over the last few days.
What about issues? First of all, let's talk about nationally. What have been the most important issues, but then also in Iowa, what have been most important to voters?
So nationally, the #1 issue has been religion, and I think especially, thinking about the discussion around Islam, that's been the #1 driver of across the nation in terms of the issues that people are talking about. In Iowa, the topics tend to be a little bit more economy focused, a little bit more focused, I think, on making ends meet. So we're seeing health care in the top 5. We're seeing concern about taxes in the top 5. The economy remains the #1 issue Iowans are talking about today. The one interesting thing that we saw emerge during the day today is that the 3rd most discussed topic are the State Department emails. So we think there might be an interesting relationship there with that issue kind of surging a little bit today. It's the 3rd most discussed topic among Iowans today that are talking about the election. And then we see this, sort of difference in the buzz between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. So that's one possible, driver behind that.
On the emails, I'm curious, had that issue been prominent prior to this?
We hadn't seen it in the top 5 before. We had seen sort of, Benghazi as a general topic kind of, floating around 5 or 6. This is the first time the State Department emails have made it into the top 3.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to take your data and the things that you've been able to find and then marry that with what the results are. And
Absolutely.
See how
Look forward to doing that tomorrow morning. That'd be very interesting.
All right. Robert D'Onofrio, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.